I'm glad we're doing this.
Me too. It's nice.
You always make everything better.
You make it easy.
Is this seat taken? Vivian Hart looked up from her untouched tomato soup. Across from her stood a rain-soaked stranger with tired eyes, an old coat, and the kind of voice that sounded like it had apologized too many times. "It depends," she said. "Are you planning to talk? Only if the soup is worse than it looks." For the first time all night, Vivian almost smiled. Tomorrow morning surgeons would open her skull to remove a rare brain tumor. By noon she might wake up changed forever, or not wake up at all. Noah Reed didn't know any of that. He only knew she was a young woman eating grilled cheese and apple pie like she was trying to memorize the taste of being alive. Then the envelope slipped from her coat. "For Mom, if I don't wake up." Noah read the words before she could hide them. And when Vivian reached for it, shaking with anger and fear, the stranger leaned closer and whispered, "Don't make silence the last thing you leave behind." The diner sat 2 blocks from Massachusetts General Hospital, squeezed between a closed pharmacy and a flower shop with dead roses in the window. Rain blurred the glass until the streetlights looked like melted gold. Inside, the air smelled like coffee, fried onions, and old vinyl booths wiped clean too many times. Vivian did not belong there. At 27, she was the CEO of Hartwell Biotech, one of the youngest biotech executives in Boston. She wore a cream cashmere coat, black heels, and the still face people mistook for confidence. In her coat pocket was a signed surgical consent form. Beside it was a sealed envelope addressed to her mother. "For Mom, if I don't wake up." Tomorrow morning, surgeons would cut into Vivian's skull and try to remove a rare tumor pressing against the parts of her brain responsible for speech and memory. The doctor had explained the risks carefully: loss of language, partial memory damage, paralysis, death. Vivian had nodded through all of it like she was reviewing a quarterly report. Then she had left the hospital and walked into the rain. She had not called her mother. She had not called Ethan, her CO, who knew just enough to worry and not enough to stop her. Instead, Vivian ordered the meal her father used to make when she was small: tomato soup, grilled cheese, and a slice of apples dinner. She hated herself for naming it that. The diner was unusually crowded because of the storm. Wet families huddled over fries. Nurses from the hospital drank coffee with both hands. A child in a red hoodie slept against his grandmother's shoulder. The stranger had come in 10 minutes earlier, checked the prices on the menu, and ordered only black coffee. He had not begged. He had not performed poverty for sympathy. He simply sat at the counter like a man calculating how much dignity he could afford. Then a family with 2 children entered, dripping rainwater and looking helplessly for seats. Vivian heard herself say, "You can sit here." The stranger turned. "Me? No, the ghost behind you." He studied her for a second, then carried his coffee over. "Noah Reed, Vivian. Just Vivian tonight, yes." He sat down. "That sounds like a warning." "It is." They ate in silence at first. Or rather, Noah drank coffee while Vivian lifted a spoonful of soup and let it cool too long. "You're not hungry," he said. "I didn't ask for commentary. You're eating like someone trying to remember the flavor before it disappears." That made her look at him. Noah lifted both hands. "Chef. Occupational hazard." Former chef, his expression shifted. Former many things. Before Vivian could ask what that meant, a voice from the next booth cut through the diner. "Oh my God, you're Vivian Hart." The woman who said it was in her 40s. With eyes and a hospital bracelet still around her wrist. Her husband tried to touch her arm, but she stood anyway. "You're the CEO of Hartwell Biotech." The room changed, a few heads turned. Then more. Vivian's fingers tightened around her spoon. "Yes," she said evenly. The woman laughed once bitterly. "You people are unbelievable. Sitting here with your warm dinner while patients like my sister have to choose between rent and cancer medication." The diner went quiet except for the rain. Vivian could have given the official answer. Research costs, manufacturing challenges, patient assistance programs, regulatory delays. Words she had used in boardrooms until they became clean enough to hide behind. But the woman's face was not a boardroom. It was grief with wet hair and shaking hands. "My company develops treatment," Vivian said, but even to herself it sounded thin. "And prices hope like a luxury," the woman snapped. "Do you know what that does to families?" Vivian did know. That was the problem. Hartwell saved lives. Hartwell also made choices that left people begging foundations, selling cars, draining savings, rationing time. The guilt rose hot in her throat, mixing with the metallic fear she had carried all evening. Noah set his coffee down. "I don't know her," he said. The woman turned on him. "Then stay out of it." "I probably should." Noah glanced at Vivian, then back at the woman. "And maybe she deserves every hard question you've got. But no one deserves to be put on trial while trying to swallow a spoonful of soup." The woman's anger faltered, not gone, but interrupted. Noah's voice stayed calm. Ask her tomorrow. Ask her in public. Ask her where she can't pretend not to hear you. But tonight, maybe let her eat. Vivian stared at him, startled by the fact that he had not defended her innocence, only her humanity. The woman sat down slowly. Vivian lowered her spoon. Her appetite was gone, but something else had shifted. After a long moment, she picked up her fork, cut the apple pie exactly in half, and pushed one piece toward Noah. Fine, she said. Since you've appointed yourself my defense attorney, you can at least earn your fee. Noah looked at the pie, then at her. For the record, he said, I charge extra for rich clients. Vivian almost smiled again. This time she did. Noah ate the apple pie like a man trying not to enjoy it too much. Vivian noticed. He cut off small pieces with the side of his fork, chewed slowly, and kept his eyes on the plate as if gratitude were something embarrassing. You can breathe, Vivian said. It's just pie. Noah looked up. That's exactly what someone born rich would say. I wasn't born rich. No. He studied her cream coat, her watch, the kind of stillness expensive people learned in rooms where nobody interrupted them. Vivian lifted an eyebrow. Careful, you're about to confuse wardrobe with biography. Noah smiled faintly. Occupational hazard. I used to judge people by what they ordered. And what did you decide about me? That you're not hungry, he said. You're saying goodbye. The fork paused in Vivian's hand. Outside, rain hit the diner windows hard enough to blur the street. Inside, people returned to their meals after the confrontation, though a few still looked at Vivian as if she were a headline that had walked in wearing heels. She took a sip of water. You said you were a chef. What happened? Noah leaned back. That's a long story. I have a long night. Something in her tone made him look at her more carefully, not with pity. Pity would have made her stand up and leave. I had a small restaurant in Portland, he said. 12 tables, bad plumbing, good chowder. My son used to sit in the corner booth after school and do homework while I burned myself trying to look impressive. Your son, Sam, 12. His face softened before he could stop it. Smart, suspicious, too good at pretending he doesn't care. Vivian recognized that last part, though she said nothing. Noah stirred his coffee. His mother died 4 years ago. We were already divorced by then, but grief doesn't care about paperwork. I thought I could keep the restaurant running, keep Sam steady, keep myself upright. But you couldn't. No, he said. I couldn't. There was no drama in the admission. That made it worse. I missed meetings, court dates, school things. I made promises when I was sober enough to mean them and depressed enough to break them. He swallowed. Eventually, Sam stopped asking when I'd come. Vivian looked at him across the table. And now I'm in Boston to lose an appointment with him. That's your plan? It wasn't my first choice. My first choice involved reconciliation, forgiveness, and maybe a sandwich. He glanced at the pie. But I got told he didn't want to see me. Vivian was quiet for a moment. Do you blame him? Noah's smile disappeared. No. That answer, simple and unprotected, made something in her chest tighten. Her phone buzzed against the table. Ethan Caldwell. She turned, it face down. Noah noticed. Someone you're avoiding? Several people. Efficient, that's what I'm known for. Her phone buzzed again, then again. Vivian's jaw tightened, but she did not answer. Noah nodded toward it. Work? A meeting. At almost midnight, a meeting that can't be postponed. People say that when they're talking about hospitals, courtrooms, or boardrooms. Vivian looked at him sharply. Noah raised one hand. I'm not asking. Good. But for the record, nobody walks 2 blocks from Mass General in a storm to eat childhood food alone because of a normal meeting. Vivian hated how gently he said it. She turned toward the window, where her reflection looked pale and unfamiliar. Second, she saw herself at 8 years old, sitting at a small kitchen table while her father placed grilled cheese triangles beside a bowl of tomato soup. Her father had fixed clocks for a living. He smelled like metals, soap, and cinnamon gum. He moved slowly, spoke softly, and believed every broken thing deserved patience. When he died, Lily Hart had cried at the kitchen sink with the water running. Vivian had stood in the hallway and made herself a promise no child should make. Mom will never have to be afraid again. That promise became scholarships, degrees, sleepless nights, a company, an empire. Somewhere along the way, Vivian had mistaken success for protection. She had built Hartwell Biotech high enough that grief could not reach the windows. Except grief had found an elevator. Her phone lit up again. Ethan, board is demanding emergency call. Pricing story is getting worse. Need you on video. A second message followed. Also, your mother called me. She knows something is wrong. Vivian closed her eyes. Then another name appeared. Mom, she let it ring. Noah saw the name before she turned the phone over. You should answer that one. You don't know anything about that one. No, he said. But I know the calls you don't answer are usually the ones that matter. Vivian's voice cooled. Is this where the former chef becomes a philosopher? No. This is where the former father recognizes cowardice. Her eyes flashed. Former father? The words hit their mark. Noah looked down. Vivian regretted it immediately, which irritated her more. I'm not weak because I don't want an audience, she said. I didn't say you were weak. People always say that, right, before they treat you like glass. Noah leaned forward slightly. You know, the world may not be kind to weak people. You're right about that. But it also has no idea what to do with people who refuse to let anyone love them. Vivian stared at him. The sentence came too close. A waitress passed with a tray of coffee mugs. Someone opened the diner door, letting in a gust of wet cold. Vivian reached for her coat, more to steady herself than to leave. That was when the envelope slipped from her pocket. It fell between their feet, white against the black and white tile. Noah saw the handwriting before she did. For Mom, if I don't wake up. The diner noise seemed to drop away. Vivian it from the floor so quickly the paper bent in her hand. Don't, she said. Noah did not move. I didn't mean to see it, but you did. Yes, and now you think you understand me. No, he said quietly. I know better than that. Her hands shook around the envelope. Anger rose because fear had nowhere else to go. You know what I think, she said. I think you're very comfortable telling strangers not to disappear for someone who disappeared from his own son. Noah flinched. The moment the words left her mouth, Vivian knew they were cruel. He looked toward the window, rain silvering his reflection. You're not wrong, he said. That was worse than if he had defended himself. I used to tell myself staying away was kinder, Noah continued. Sam had already lost his mother's thought. I thought if I stopped showing up badly, maybe he'd stop hoping correctly. His voice roughened. But absence isn't a gift. It's just another kind of wound. Vivian looked down at the envelope. Her mother's name was not written on the front. Just Mom, because for all Vivian's power, all her contracts, all her polished speeches, when it came to Lily Hart, she was still a frightened daughter leaving a note. Noah pushed the remaining pie toward her. I know the face of someone preparing to leave without saying goodbye, he said. That's all. Vivian did not answer. For the first time that night, she was not thinking about the board, or the surgery, or the tumor waiting inside her skull. She was thinking about her mother picking up the phone tomorrow, and hearing the truth from someone else. She held the envelope tighter. And for the first time, the idea of silence felt less like protection and more like betrayal. Vivian left the diner because staying felt dangerous, not physically dangerous. That would have been easier. She understood physical danger now. It came with scans, consent forms, surgical risks explained in careful voices. This was different. Noah Reed had looked at an envelope on the floor and somehow seen straight through her. That was unacceptable. So she stood, pulled on her cream coat, placed too much cash on the table and said, I need to go. Noah glanced at the money. That's either a tip or a small apology. It's neither. Then it's too much. Vivian gave him a look. Do you argue with everyone who feeds you? Only the ones who look like they're running from a phone call. She should have walked out without answering. Instead, she said, Good night, Noah. The rain hit her the moment she stepped outside. Boston was slick and black under the storm. Car headlights smeared across the pavement. The hospital stood 2 blocks away, lit like a ship in bad weather. Vivian started toward it quickly. A few seconds later, Noah appeared beside her, holding his old coat closed against the wind. I'm not following you, he said. You're walking in the same direction. That's different. It really isn't. I have somewhere to be. Vivian looked at him. At midnight, in a storm, he pointed down the street. Community kitchen. I used to help there. Sometimes they stay open during bad weather for people waiting on hospital patients. I didn't ask. No, but you were about to assume I was homeless, dangerous, or emotionally attached to your pie. I was leaning toward emotionally attached to my pie. That pie was mediocre. You ate all of it. I've made complicated compromises in my life. Vivian almost smiled again, then remembered she was angry with him. Her phone rang inside her coat. Ethan. She ignored it. It rang again. Then a text appeared. Vivian, answer me. Board is already on the call. They want approval tonight. She kept walking. Noah did not comment this time. They reached a low brick building with warm light spilling from its windows. A handwritten sign on the door read, Hot meals, all welcome inside. The air smelled of soup, wet coats, and industrial cleaner. People sat at long folding tables. An older man with an oxygen tank, 2 teenage girls sharing headphones, a mother rocking a sleeping baby, a man in hospital scrubs staring blankly into a cup of coffee. A woman in a red apron looked up from the serving counter. Noah, he gave an embarrassed little wave. Hey, Marisol, I thought you were done with Boston. So did Boston. She glanced toward the kitchen. Lewis is stuck across town. We've got 40 people and 1 pot of soup, Noah sighed. Of course you do. Vivian checked her watch. I have to get to the hospital. Noah looked at her. Then go. But he was already rolling up his sleeves. Vivian should have left. Instead, she stood there as Noah disappeared behind the counter and, within seconds, changed. Not magically, not dramatically, but clearly. His shoulders squared, his tired eyes sharpened. He tasted the soup, winced, added salt, found onions, asked for garlic, organized volunteers, moved around the small kitchen like his body remembered a language his life had forgotten. He was impatient, exacting, occasionally rude. No, not that knife. That knife gave up in 2007. Who chopped these carrots? A raccoon. Marisol, if you call this coffee one more time, I'm reporting you to the authorities. People laughed. Vivian watched from near the door, unsettled. Noah Reed was not a sad man waiting to be saved. He was a man who had lost the place where his gifts once made sense. Her phone vibrated again. This time, she answered. Ethan's face appeared on the screen, tense and exhausted. Thank God, he said. Where are you? Near the hospital. Vivian, the board is waiting. The pricing story is getting worse. The patient groups are pushing hard and investors are panicking. I'm aware. They want you on video now. I have surgery in 7 hours. His expression softened. I know. No, Vivian said quietly. You know there's a procedure. You don't know what it is. Ethan looked away for a second. That hurt more than she expected. The board knows enough to be scared, he said. And scared boards do ugly things. What do they want? Ethan hesitated. Say it. They want approval on the licensing increase before morning. Vivian went still. Around her was handing bowls of zips to people whose faces carried the unmistakable exhaustion of hospitals and bills. A woman in a knit hat counted pills from a plastic bottle beside her tray. The man with the oxygen tank asked if he could take an extra roll for his wife. Vivian had approved increases before. She had always had reasons. Research costs, future development, market pressure, shareholder confidence. The brutal math of keeping a biotech company alive long enough to make medicine that mattered. Reasons could be true and still not be clean. The increase affects oncology access programs, Vivian said. Ethan's silence answered. They want to raise costs during a pricing scandal. They want to stabilize the stock before your medical leave becomes public. My medical leave is not public. Your mother called me. Vivian closed her eyes. Ethan continued, softer now. Lily knows something is wrong. I didn't tell her details, but she knows you're hiding something. Vivian's throat tightened. On the other side of the room, Noah placed a bowl of soup in front of the older man with the oxygen tank and said something that made the man smile. Vivian looked at the screen. Put me on the board call, Ethan blinked. Now? Now. A minute later, Vivian stood in the corner of a community kitchen, rain dripping from the hem of her expensive coat, facing 12 board members on a glowing screen. The chairman spoke first. Vivian, we need decisive leadership. You have it. The licensing increase must be approved tonight. We cannot appear weak while activist groups attack our pricing model. Behind Vivian, a volunteer dropped a tray. Someone apologized. A child coughed. One board member frowned. Where are you? Somewhere useful, Vivian said. The chairman ignored that. The increase is temporary positioning. We can expand assistance programs later. That's what we said last time. A silence followed. Ethan watched her carefully from one square on the screen. The chairman's voice hardened. This is not the moment for sentiment. Vivian thought of the woman in the diner, her sister choosing between rent and cancer medication. She thought of her mother's unanswered calls. She thought of her father, fixing broken clocks at the kitchen table, telling her that a thing was not repaired just because it started ticking again. Then she looked past the screen at the line of people waiting for soup. No, Vivian said. The chairman stared. Excuse me, I will not approve the increase, Vivian. In fact, we're freezing oncology pricing for 12 months, effective immediately. Ethan will draft the announcement. Several voices erupted at once. Vivian raised her hand. We will also expand the Patient Assistance Fund and publish the eligibility process in plain language. No more hiding behind forms sick people need lawyers to understand. One board member laughed sharply. You are making emotional decisions under medical stress. There it was. The thing she had feared, not death, not weakness. Being reduced to a woman whose pain made her unfit to lead. Vivian's voice became very calm. If this company can only survive by making sick people poorer, then maybe my brain isn't the only thing that needs surgery. The room behind her went quiet. Even Noah looked up. The chairman's face darkened. You may be forcing us to consider whether you remain fit for your role. For once, Vivian said, that may be the least interesting thing about me. Then she ended the call. For several seconds, she just stood there, phone in hand. The power she had spent years building had not disappeared, but it had shifted beneath her feet. For the first time in her adult life, she did not know whether tomorrow she would still be CEO of Hartwell Biotech, and tomorrow she might not remember what CEO meant. Her knees weakened. Noah appeared beside her with a bowl of soup. You look like you just declared war on rich people. I am rich people. Then it's a civil war. He handed her the bowl. Eat. Vivian stared at it. Is this pity soup? No, it's oversalted soup with structural ambition. Despite herself, she laughed once, then her phone lit up again. Mom. Vivian looked at the name. This time, her thumb hovered over the answer button longer than before. Noah saw it but said nothing. That was his gift, she was beginning to realize. He did not push people toward the truth. He simply stayed close enough that running felt embarrassing. Vivian did not answer, not yet. But she did not turn the phone over either. She held it in her hand, bright and ringing, while the storm beat against the windows and the smell of soup filled the room. For the first time, the silence between her and her mother felt less like a shield, and more like a door she was standing in front of, afraid to open. The community kitchen began to empty after 2 in the morning. Rain softened into a thin gray drizzle, and the people who had come in shivering left with paper bags, reheated coffee, and the fragile dignity of having been fed without being questioned. Noah stayed behind to wipe counters, stack trays, and argue silently with a coffee machine that seemed determined to die on principle. Vivian remained near the window, her phone in her hand. Her mother's missed calls sat on the screen like accusations. Lily Hart had raised Vivian on a teacher's salary after her husband died. She had packed lunches, graded papers at the kitchen table, sewn loose buttons onto Vivian's school blazer, and pretended not to be tired when bills arrived in envelopes the color of bad news. Vivian had built an entire company from the promise that her mother would never have to be afraid again. And now she had turned fear into something even crueler. She had kept it secret. Noah did not ask whether she was going to call. He simply moved around the kitchen, rinsing pots, wrapping leftovers, making himself useful in the way some people prayed. His presence irritated Vivian because it did not demand anything. It just remained. A message came through from Ethan. Your mother is at Mass General. She's asking for you. Vivian read it twice. Then she slipped the envelope from her coat pocket. For Mom if I don't wake up. The words looked childish now, not tender, not noble, cowardly. She had imagined the letter as mercy. Clean instructions, final affection, a way to spare Lily the horror of watching her daughter afraid. But absence was not mercy. Noah had said that in his own way. His son had learned it the hard way. Vivian was beginning to understand that love left in an envelope was still a kind of abandonment. Her surgery was scheduled for 6:30. There were 4 hours left. Noah finally came out of the kitchen carrying a paper bag. Inside was a grilled cheese sandwich wrapped in foil and a slice of apple pie in a plastic container. He placed it beside her with no ceremony. A proper last meal, his expression seemed to say, should not end badly. Vivian looked at the bag, then at him. For a moment, the diner, the board call, the woman accusing her, her mother's name glowing on the phone, and the tumor inside her skull all pressed against her at once. She was too tired to hold the wall up. She asked if he would walk with her to the hospital. Noah nodded. Outside, Boston smelled of rain, exhaust, and wet stone. The hospital rose ahead of them, bright and impersonal, its windows lit with hundreds of private emergencies. Vivian had walked into boardrooms filled with men twice her age and never slowed. Yet the closer she got to those sliding glass doors, the more her steps changed. Noah noticed, but did not comment. That was becoming the most dangerous thing about him. He saw too much and said too little. Inside Mass General, the lobby was nearly empty. A security guard looked up, then looked away. Somewhere, a vending machine hummed. Somewhere else, a family cried in low voices near a bank of elevators. Ethan was waiting near admissions, still in yesterday's suit. His face showed the strain of someone who had spent years respecting Vivian's boundaries, and one night realizing boundaries could become a locked room. Beside him stood Lily Hart. She was smaller than Vivian remembered. Or perhaps Vivian had spent too many years trying to outgrow being someone's daughter. Lily wore an old navy coat and rain-speckled glasses. Her silver-streaked hair had been pulled back carelessly. In one hand, she held a tissue so tightly it had become a white knot. When she saw Vivian, relief came first, then hurt. The kind of hurt that did not shout because it had already been wounded too deeply. Vivian had survived hostile investors' lawsuits, federal panels and reporters who smiled before asking questions designed to draw blood. None of that had prepared her for her mother's face. Lily crossed the lobby slowly. She reached for Vivian, then stopped, as if suddenly unsure whether she was allowed to touch the woman her daughter had become. That broke Vivian more than anger would have. The explanation came out badly at first. Two-fact humor, procedure, risk, timing, specialist, consent. Vivian heard herself sounding like a press briefing and hated every word. Lily listened with her hand over her mouth. Ethan looked away. Noah stood near the wall, not part of the family, not quite a stranger anymore. When Vivian finally ran out of clinical language, silence took over. Lily did not ask why Vivian was sick. She asked why she had been left outside the truth. That was the question Vivian could not answer without becoming a child again. Because she was afraid. Because Lily had already buried a husband. Because Vivian had spent her whole life trying to become the proof that her mother's sacrifices had meant something. Because if Lily saw her weak, Vivian feared every scholarship, every sleepless year, every headline, every dollar, every hard-won room would collapse into one unbearable fact. A daughter could do everything right and still not be able to save herself. Vivian cried then, not elegantly, not quietly enough. The tears came with exhaustion and shame, and for once she did not lift a hand fast enough to stop them. Lily stepped forward at once. There was no speech grand enough for what passed between them. A mother's arms closed around her daughter, and Vivian, who had spent years being untouchable, folded into them like someone finally allowed to be held. Ethan turned his face toward the windows. Noah looked down at his shoes. The clock moved. Hospitals did not pause for revelation. Pre-op took Vivian into its fluorescent order. Forms were checked. A bracelet was scanned. Nurses asked questions Vivian had already answered. The surgeon arrived with the calm seriousness of a person who knew hope was useful but not sufficient. The risks had changed slightly overnight. The tumor's location made the procedure more delicate than expected. There was a chance Vivian would wake with impaired speech. A chance memory would be affected. A chance swelling could turn dangerous before morning ended. Vivian listened. This time, her composure did not feel like strength. It felt like a habit she no longer needed but did not yet know how to release. Lily held one hand. Ethan stood at the foot of the bed, pale and helpless. Noah remained by the curtain, holding the paper bag from the kitchen. Vivian noticed it and almost laughed. The sound came out thin. He had brought the sandwich and pie all the way here. A ridiculous offering, a sacred one. When the nurse stepped away, Noah approached and set the bag beside the bed. The foil had gone soft from steam. The pie was probably terrible now. Vivian loved it for that. She looked at him, this man who had lost a restaurant, lost faith with his son, lost the right to think of himself as dependable, and yet had stayed through the long, strange night of a woman he had met over soup. The fear returned then, sharp and childish. Not fear of pain, not even fear of death, fear of disappearing before she had learned how to be known. Vivian's eyes asked the question before her mouth could. Why are you still here? Noah leaned close enough that only she could hear him. His voice was low, rough from sleeplessness and rain. Because someone should be here when you wake up, he whispered, and someone should be here if you don't. The words entered her gently and destroyed the last of her defenses. Vivian closed her eyes. She had thought courage would feel like certainty, like command, like the old version of herself walking into a room and bending it toward her will. But courage, she learned in that moment, could also feel like terror with someone holding your hand. She looked at Lily first, then Ethan, then Noah. She did not promise she would be fine. She did not say she was ready. She only let herself be wheeled toward the double doors without pretending she was not afraid. As the doors opened, she turned her head once. Lily was crying. Ethan stood with both hands clasped behind his neck. Noah remained in the hallway, still holding the ridiculous paper bag, as if there might be some use for it later. Then the doors closed. The waiting began. Noah sat beside Lily without asking permission. Ethan lowered himself into the chair across from them, his phone already filling with messages from a company beginning to fracture. For a long while, none of them spoke. Near dawn, Noah took out his phone and opened a message thread with Sam. His thumb hovered over the screen. He had written too many apologies in his life and lived too few of them. This one needed to be smaller, truer. He typed, "I stayed this time." He sent it before he could make it sound better. Minutes passed. Then his phone lit up. Sam replied with only 2 words, "I know." Noah stared at them until his vision blurred. Outside, morning gathered slowly over Boston, colorless and uncertain. Inside the operating room, Vivian Hart was beyond control, and for the first time the people who loved her, or were beginning to, did not try to turn fear into a plan. They simply stayed. Vivian did not wake like people did in movies. There was no sudden gasp, no golden light, no perfect return. She came back slowly, first to pain, then to the steady beeping beside her bed, then to her mother's face bending over her with swollen eyes. Vivian tried to say, "Mom." Nothing came out. Panic shot through her. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. The machines began to complain. Lily took her hand at once. "Don't try yet," she whispered. "You're awake. That's enough. Awake. But not whole." The surgeon later explained that the operation had gone as well as they could hope, but swelling near the speech centers would make recovery uncertain for a while. Vivian listened without speaking, furious at her own helplessness. She had built a company with her voice. Now even one word felt like climbing a mountain. Ethan visited that afternoon with dark circles under his eyes, the tablet full of chaos. The board was furious. Investors were threatening action. Some directors wanted to reverse her decision on the patient assistance fund while she was recovering. Vivian reached for a notepad. Her hand shook as she wrote 3 uneven words. Do not undo. Ethan looked at the page, then at her. I won't, he said. She underlined not until the paper nearly tore. For the first time since the surgery, Ethan smiled. Bossy, even with brain swelling. Vivian would have laughed if it did not hurt. Noah came that evening. He brought no flowers, no dramatic speech. Just terrible hospital coffee and a grilled cheese sandwich wrapped badly in foil. He sat by the window and complained quietly about the hospital cafeteria as if that were a perfectly normal thing to do beside a woman who had nearly died. Vivian watched him, exhausted. On the 4th day, she managed one broken sentence. You stayed. Noah looked up. His smile was small, almost shy. I'm practicing. That was the right answer, not heroic, not too much, just honest. Recovery was not graceful. Vivian forgot words, snapped at nurses, cried when she could not remember the name of a simple object, and hated needing help. Lily stayed anyway. Noah returned anyway. Ethan kept Hartwell from collapsing and refused to undo her decision. Noah's life also moved forward in small, imperfect steps. Sam agreed to meet him for dinner once a week. The first dinner was awkward. Sam did not call him Dad, but he did not leave early either. When Noah told Vivian, she wrote on her notepad, "That counts." Weeks later, Vivian left the hospital thinner, slower, and less of herself. Hartwell was still in crisis, but the first patient was approved through the new assistance fund. Lily cried when Vivian showed her the message. 3 months after surgery, Vivian returned to the same diner near Mass General. Her hair was shorter. Her speech still paused sometimes, but she was alive. Noah arrived 5 minutes late, breathless and apologizing. Vivian lifted a hand. I'm learning, she said carefully, not to turn 5 minutes into a tragedy. He smiled and sat across from her. They ordered tomato soup, grilled cheese, and apple pie, the same meal. But this time, Vivian did not eat it like a goodbye. Noah cut the pie in half and pushed one piece toward her. What do we call this one? He asked. Vivian looked out at Boston after the rain, then back at him. The first meal, she said. The first one I'm not eating like I'm trying to disappear. Noah did not take her hand, not yet. He simply stayed across from her, and Vivian finally understood. Sometimes love did not arrive as rescue. Sometimes it arrived as someone who stayed long enough for you to begin again. If I were Vivian Hart, I think I would have been tempted to do exactly what she did at first. I would have tried to control the ending. I would have written the letter, signed the forms, eaten the meal alone, and told myself it was kindness not to make anyone watch me fall apart. But maybe that is the lie strong people tell themselves. Sometimes silence is not protection. Sometimes silence is just fear dressed up as dignity. When you have failed someone you love, staying can feel arrogant. It can feel easier to step back and tell yourself they are better off without you. But if I were Noah, I hope I would have chosen what he finally chose. Not a perfect apology, not a dramatic promise, just presence. To sit beside Vivian before surgery. To message Sam, I stayed this time. To begin proving love through small repeated acts instead of beautiful speeches. Because maybe love is not always about saving someone. Maybe love is simply refusing to let fear make you absent. So let me ask you, have you ever hidden your pain from someone you loved because you thought silence would protect them? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe Soul Stirring Stories channel. Sometimes the meal we think is our last becomes the first one we truly taste, and sometimes love begins with a stranger who does not promise to save us, only to stay.